If you visit Redwood National Park, do not stray from the beaten path. This awesome story is written by Connor B. 93. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. When I was a boy, me and my friends got lost, or so that is the official story. What really happened occurred when we were on a hike through the Redwood National Park and decided to stray from the trail. There we discovered the truth about the national parks and the real reason people go missing in them. Perhaps I am getting ahead of myself and should start by telling you my tale. Then perhaps you will listen to my warnings. So here it is, my story. August 13th, 1998. It was a scorching hot summer's day. I was 12 years old and already thought I knew everything about the world, as you do when you are young and so full of surety. Oak-rich earthy smells perfumed the air, and grand wooden giants loomed from all the sides of the path. They were the moss-coated sentries of the Redwood National Park.
Come on guys, not too much further. About another 30 minutes until we reach the campsite.
Our Scout Leader Charlton, exclaimed. He's been saying that for the last hour, groaned Tyler, the more outspoken and cheeky of my friends. Why did you come on the hike if you were just going to moan? Simon countered, his words forever disapproving of Tyler. Do you guys think we can stop for a minute? Ethan wheezed, being an asthmatic, the youngest and smallest of the group. The walk had knocked the stuffing out of the 11-year-old.
Don't dawdle or stop. Stick to the path. Those fences and signs are there for a reason.
Scout Leader Charlton added, as he pointed over to the right. He could have said more, but we were not paying attention. We were your average 12 and 11-year-olds. When someone said don't, we ignored it. And despite the Scout Leader telling us not to stop or dawdle, I told the others we should wait a moment so Ethan could have a breather. It didn't take much convincing from Tyler that it would be far more exciting if we went exploring, rather than continue hiking with the rest of the squares. Especially if the places we were exploring were those cordoned off and forbidden from our Scout Leader. Even Simon, the more reserved and mature one of the group, was eager to follow Tyler as he rushed over to the cordoned off area. This was a huge mistake, and obviously as an adult I look back and know how stupid and dangerous that was. But when you were young, you think you're invincible. We should have heeded the signs that warned to stay on the path. We should have listened to our Scout Leader's words, but he was now far ahead of us, and we had already sneaked away from the safety of the troop. Our foolish choices only continued as we slipped under the fence that cordoned off the area ahead. We were young idiots, that's what we were. We ignored all the warnings, laughed and scoffed at the idea of getting lost or becoming the meal of a black bear. And at last we felt vindicated, for our little adventure started off fine. No harm or cause for concern, as we rambled through the undergrowth and played hide and seek around the Redwood Towers. We skipped stones across a small creek, saw a wild deer before something scared it off. We even found a coyote strung up in a tree, which Tyler was quick to claim was the work of the Jersey Devil. Until Simon pointed out that not only were we not in the Jersey Pine Barrens, but it was also far more likely that a mountain lion dragged it up there to avoid being disturbed. I think we should probably head back, I said, feeling a little tired, and started to entertain the thought that we may have made a mistake wandering so far from the group. Agreeing, we retraced our steps, but as we walked, we came across an interesting scene. What we had discovered was a campsite, long since abandoned and smothered by layers of forest debris. The tents looked as though they had been ravaged by claws, but Simon, the more sensible of us, claimed it was just exposure to the elements and time that had tore through the fabric and dilapidated the site. Still, it didn't stop us from coming up with all sorts of scary backstories for the moss-shrouded sleeping bags and broken lanterns. Tyler warned everyone that it could be a Bigfoot, but we just laughed. Everyone knows Bigfoot was a myth. Ethan, the more quieter of our group, pointed out that the Tarians seemed to travel in sets of 5. Ethan, the more quieter of our group, pointed out that the Tarians seemed to travel in sets of 5, as though Freddy Krueger with his razor fingers had carved through the material himself. Ethan, I'm telling you, it's just what happens when these things are left out here at the mercy of wind, rain, storms, Simon assured us. But why were they left here? I mean, they've clearly dug out a fire pit, spent the time to set the site up, and then they just abandoned it, Ethan pointed out, causing us all to get a little quieter. I think we should probably head back, I suggested. This time my words were more urgent than before. The others didn't say that they too were feeling uneasy, but I could tell they were just as nervous as I. Ethan was right. It was odd for all this stuff to be left here, almost as if they had fled in a panic, or worse, fell foul of something hungry. Marching on through the scrub and endless wooden maze, we all began to worry that we had ventured too long and too far from the trail. I could have sworn it was just a few meters to the right, Simon insisted as he peered from behind his glasses. Evidently, it isn't though, is it, Simon? Tyler snapped, with his disposition becoming more and more agitated with each passing moment. Guys, you're not going to believe this, Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly as he peeled back a large shrub. There before us was the same abandoned campsite we had left almost an hour ago. That's not possible. We've been walking for 40 minutes straight, I gasped, pointing to my watch, but the hands began to spiral. I think your watch is broken, Simon insisted, trying his best to remain rational. Great! This is just perfect! We've been walking in a circle! Tyler yelled. We lost, aren't we? Stammered Ethan, his hands clutching each other as he paced around in an anxious manner. Guys, calm down, I spoke, but my words did nothing to slow the rising panic in us all. Help! Help! Is anyone there? Tyler called out. Suddenly, Simon's hand smothered Tyler's mouth as he emitted a low hush. Stop it! Do you want to attract every grizzly, black bear and mountain lion for miles around? Simon hushed. We all got quiet, but it wasn't just us who ceased making noise. The whole forest around us fell silent. Even the normal creaking of trees and whistle of wind disappeared, and it appeared that the animals had muted themselves too, for not a bird or cicada could be heard. Guys, I don't want to be that guy, but something isn't right here, I suggested. John's right. I mean, we've all read about those people who go missing in national parks. They step off the trail or path for just a minute and they're never seen again, Tyler declared. Oh, stop it. Next you'll be suggesting aliens abducted them, Simon scoffed. In 1982, they came up here and were never seen again. And what about those kids who went camping a few years back? They got lost and ended up killed by a grizzly. It could happen to us, shouted Ethan. Shh, I heard something, I snapped. Looking around, I scanned the bark and branches around us, expecting in my heart that I'd seen nothing. My eyes landed on a tree trunk, tall and towering only a few meters away from us. Upon its surface was what at first I thought was a yellow and black orb weaver. Shock rippled through me as a bald yellow skinned head peeked slightly from behind the tree and revealed that what I had thought was a spider was actually a hand clutching at the wood. We have to go now, I said, trying my best not to scream or shout. And without giving them any indication of what I had seen, I sprinted through the forest. Following close behind me, the others kept pace. But I didn't tell them still. I wished to reserve that knowledge until I was sure we had put enough space between us and whatever it was. Fear rushed through my feet, and 10 minutes became 20, and 20, 30. But still, we ran. All the while, I ignored their demands to know what I had seen and why we were running. After 30 minutes, according to Simon's watch, of running in the opposite direction to that thing, we stopped to take a breather. We rested against one of the Redwood towers that only earlier we had been playing hide and seek behind. It was there, I told them, for I could no longer refuse to answer their questions. What was it? What did you see? Tyler panted frantically. A person, I think, I said, causing Ethan to take a nervous gulp of his inhaler. Oh, don't you start too, the rational Simon replied. No, I think it was a person in yellow and black paint or something, I asserted, trying my best to not freak them out. Like camo? Tyler questioned, his eyes wide with worry. Yellow camo? That's a bit redundant, Simon laughed. I know what I saw, Simon, I snapped, letting my fear and agitation get the better of me. What were they doing? This person you saw? Ethan quivered. It looked like they were watching us. They were peeking from behind the tree, I answered. Shivers ran through us all, despite the humidity and the heat. I think all our bloods ran cold after I spoke those words. We sat against that redwood for a long pause to gather ourselves, to calm our worries. Maybe Simon was right to laugh at me. Perhaps it was a hallucination brought on by the heat. That makes sense, I thought. Still, it didn't explain the lack of animals, the absence of sound and encroaching thick old air of the forest, which continued to become heavier with each minute we spent there. Darkness began to creep in through the national park, though admittedly it was difficult to tell the time of day when the canopy above eclipsed the sun almost entirely and my watch was malfunctioning. We need to make camp, I suggested. Are you mad? You've just told us some creeping camo was watching us from behind a tree, countered Tyler. No, he's right. If we just continue on, wandering aimlessly in the dark, we'd run the risk of getting even more lost. And if there is someone following us, then wouldn't it be better if we are walking around blind to our surroundings? Simon said. Guys! Ethan exclaimed, his voice hushed and shaking. We all looked over and saw what had unnerved him. With his hand shaking, his pointed finger fell upon the site of the same abandoned campsite we had found and fled earlier. This can't be happening. This can't be happening, Tyler rambled. His words and pace quickened into panicked steps. We have to stay calm. There is a perfectly rational explanation, Simon stated, but even he didn't seem to believe his own words. Oh, shut up, Simon. We just ran for 30 minutes straight in a straight line. How exactly did we end up back here? Tyler thundered, his voice ripping apart all the surety in Simon's posture. Simon stumbled. For once, our group's skeptic fell short of answers, and in his disbelief was replaced with unease. I don't know what's happening, but I do know arguing and running around like headless chickens isn't going to help, I declared. Use your compass, Simon suggested, but as I brought the compass out from my pocket, I could already see it wasn't going to help, for the arrow on my compass was broken, bewitched, or magnetised. It would spin wildly, then stop and point towards the abandoned camp, then spin again and stop on the camp once more. Over and over it did this, until eventually I just said it was broken. I didn't tell them what was happening, choosing to spare them of the confusion and fear that I was feeling. It's busted, I told them. Great. No way to tell the time, no way to tell which direction we are heading, and we seem to be walking in a circle. Tyler nervously laughed, his usual sarcastic and clowning humour drowning beneath waves of worry. Looking around, I could see no sign of the strange figure who I had glimpsed earlier, but I had noticed the sun was setting. It's going to get dark soon. We need to be sensible. We should make camp here tonight, and tomorrow we'll continue on trying to find a way out of here, I added, trying to remain a clear and level-headed leader. But I could see the others were racked with anxiety and needed some kind of authority to make them feel safe. Reluctantly, the others agreed. We'd made camp at the abandoned site, and I assured them that whatever I saw was probably long gone now. So we set out to prepare ourselves for the night ahead. We already had canteens filled with water, but we needed food and warmth. Simon, being the more knowledgeable of us, picked berries that he knew weren't poisonous, whilst Tyler and I set up a fire in the already dug out fire pit. Ethan revealed a few chocolate bars he had on him, and together with our berries we staved off our hunger as the evening's twilight rolled in. In the gloom we sat around our warming fire. Tyler, you know those people who were missing in the national parks? Did they ever find any of them? Ethan wheezed. Sure, some of them, Tyler spat, without concern for Ethan's nerves. Shrinking and looking almost haunted, Ethan's dread was immediately apparent, and even Tyler tried to calm him. Don't think about that though, Ethan. We're going to be fine, Tyler reassured, unconvincingly. What time is it, Simon? I asked, having noticed him staring intensely at his watch. It's saying 4 PM, but that can't be right, Simon stuttered. 4 PM? It's pitch black. I'd get that watch sent back to the shop, mate. You've been ripped off, Tyler joked. It's not the watch, it's this place, Ethan whimpered. Guys, I can't bear this anymore. I just can't, he yelled as he bounded up from the log on which he was sat. Frantically, Ethan stormed around the campsite and cupped his hands over his mouth. Please, can anyone hear us? Ethan called out into the night, his words tearful and afraid. Ethan, calm down, I told him. Ethan, shut up before something hears you, Simon snapped. his collected and intelligent manner diminished by concern for his own safety. "Help us! Please! We need help!" Ethan screamed out, causing Tyler and Simon to leap up to silence him. Suddenly, there was a cracking of a twig and we all stopped and looked towards the direction. Our sights delved into the dark, imagining black bears, mountain lions and all manner of starving beasts, but nothing was there, just the endless empty, unflinching abyss. Turning back around, we looked at Ethan, who was exhausted, defeated and tearful. "I just want to go home," he wept. Down from the trees, yellow carapace-clad arms descended upon Ethan's head, their claws grasping onto either side of his face and twisted sharply, causing a loud snap to sound out. Terror streaked through us and we all hurled ourselves back as our friend's small, lifeless body was hoisted up through the branches and into the canopy. "What the hell was that?" Tyler screamed as he fell away from the area where Ethan had been standing. Leaves and twigs fell from rustling canopy above, and down minutes later an arm, severed and bloody, fell through a cloud of leaves and landed in front of us. "Run!" I yelled. Simon and Tyler screamed and followed in my wake, fleeing into the night. We were less afraid of bears, wolves and bobcats, and more afraid of becoming prey to whatever that thing in the trees was. In our fright, we fled with no concern for our direction, nor what lay ahead, and eventually our blind sprint led us over the top of a shallow dip. All three of us tumbled to the ground and lay there panting, terrified and utterly powerless. "This isn't real. This has to be some sort of hallucination. Yeah, that's it. The berries. It must have been the berries," Simon said, trying to rationalise what we had witnessed. "Simon, it's real. We all just saw Ethan's neck go full on exorcist twist, and we all saw one of his arms come falling down from the trees like a chewed up twig, so stop with the rationalising crap," Tyler shouted as he jumped to his feet. "Shut up, Tyler. This is all your fault. I don't know why I let you guys talk me into leaving the group," Simon yelled back, his words being followed by him shoving Tyler against the redwood. With fists raised, they were ready to take their fears out on each other, but before they could brawl, my voice cut through their ridiculousness. "Quiet, the pair of yous," I hissed, trying not to raise my voice too high. "Maybe it's gone," Simon suggested with hopeful naivety. Erupting out of the soil beneath his feet, a tall, slender humanoid emerged. It appeared so quickly that none of us got a good look at it, nor did we have time to stop it from snatching up Simon and flying off through the canopy on giant buzzing wings. Icarus would have been envious of the wings that thing bore, but its flight was swifter than any bird or bug, and its speed was sharp and lethal. Simon stood no chance against that thing as it whisked him off his feet and dragged him into the deep of the redwood maze. Calling back like deathly echoes, his voice screamed and begged for us to help, but we couldn't, and eventually his futile pleading faded into the deafening silence of the national park. "We've got to go, man! We've got to go now! I need to get out of here!" Tyler howled as he ran into the darkness, abandoning me. "Tyler, no! Wait! Don't leave me!" I implored, but he was deaf to my words. Alone in the dark, I walked, expecting to fall prey to the monstrous thing in the trees at any moment. However, it appeared that it was not yet finished playing what sick game it was playing, but the shrubbery that lay ahead of me looked all too familiar. Pushing its leaves aside, I found the campsite. The fire we had made was still burning bright, and everything was as we had left it. There was only one thing missing: Ethan's arm. In that moment, I resolved to survive, despite whatever it was that was hunting us. Someone had to get out of here and warn others of the winged predator. I now know this was just adrenaline kicking in, the good old fight or flight, trying to assist me in my dire situation. Tearing off some of the fabric from the tent, I bound a thick branch in it and doused it in some oil from a lantern which had been left alongside all the other camping gear. Opting for the long and dangerous road into the veil of shadows around me, I began to walk. My only company, the warm glow of my light. Every snap of a branch, every crunch of leaves beneath my feet, I imagined what that thing coming back to finish what it had started. Yet, despite my feet aching, I continued, refusing to acknowledge each blister that formed and burst within my shoes. Then, as if by chance, the illumination from my torch shone upon a tree and revealed a strange carved marking. It sort of looked like a pixie or a fairy, and though I was confused on what it might mean. Maybe this was some sort of trail marker my ignorant younger mind conceived. I figured that it had to have been carved by human hands so as to guide lost wanderers to safety. Following the carvings, I worked my way through the redwoods, weaving in and out of their intimidating, towering trunks. Eventually, after what felt like eternity, I found a clearing and rushed in. I expected to find my scout leader and the others, but this was not the case. For this was not the clearing in which my scout troop had set up camp. No, this was somewhere else. Anomalously, the clearing did not have a carpet of dry soil and dead leaves, like the rest of the pack. Instead, it was a circular expanse of green grass, littered with tents, backpacks, gasoline cans, and all manner of camping equipment. By torchlight, the secrets of the clearing were revealed, for all around me were old boots, trainers, caps, and sleeping bags. And sticking out the discarded clothing were bones and skulls, all of which looked human and ranged in size and shape. At first, I imagined this was a graveyard of sorts, a killing field maybe. But then I realised it wasn't a burial site. It was worse than that. It was a larder. My heart sank as it sank in that the markings I had followed of winged figures were clearly leading me here and not to safety. And it was obvious now that it wasn't human hands that had carved the markings. Abruptly, my inspection of the surroundings came to a halt as a disturbing sound drew my attention to the centre of the clearing. The noise was ghastly, a sort of chewing and grating sound that gargled and glugged with each bite. Accompanying the horrid noise was a feeble moaning, low and dim, the noise of a trapped or dying animal. With my orange flame, I approached the centre of the clearing, wandering through the field of lost campers and corpses, until I made it to the middle, where a large and old oak tree stood, a solitary specimen of its kind. Edging around the corner of the tree, I followed the noise, with dread shivering up my spine and rattling my bones. Each step I took causing my instinct to scream at me to run in the opposite directions. Yet something else drew me on. I should have listened to my instinct. Because horror tore through my body, soldering my feet to the ground as I glimpsed the sight ahead. Speechless and shocked, I opened my mouth to scream as the amber-coloured light revealed all. Before me was Tyler, trapped in the mantis grip of a yellow-skinned humanoid. Her arms were locked around his crumpled body as she, crouching and hunched over him, gorged herself upon his flesh. Splitting apart and segmenting, her face moved like the rasping mandibles of an insect, while her grey translucent teeth raked sinew and meat from the nape of his neck. "John!" Tyler whimpered, his broken form slouched over and limp. "Let him go!" I yelled, thrusting the torch towards her. She hissed as she fell out of her crouched position and fluttered up into the air, disappearing into the black for a moment. Desperate to help him, I reached over to Tyler, but as I looked down, I saw she had already hollowed out his back, exposing his spine. However, the most gruesome part was seeing that there wasn't much else left of his interior, and yet his heart continued to beat and his empty eyes begged for life. Holding back my vomit, I fell away from the sight and swerved around in all directions, looking out for the monstrous creature, whose buzzing wings were the only sound I could hear. "Why are you doing this?" I cried out.
"This place is ours, meat, sacred to us. All that step within its boundaries are food,"
she chirped, her voice resembling the sound crickets make. Out of the shadows she emerged, her wicked beauty, a visage of Titiana. I stared at her, lacking the words or the courage to speak. Before my eyes, I watched as her yellow plates and raking fangs retracted back into place, forming a face that resembled a human, complete with womanly black bow lips. "What are you?" I asked, but I needn't, for what she was clear.
"Old? Older than the dirt beneath your toes? Hungrier than any beast. I am the reason men feared the woods and the dark,"
she replied, her bald, hairless head twisting and tilting with each word, almost as if she were a curious animal inspecting her prey. "You killed my friends!" I shouted.
"I've killed thousands of meat, as have my sisters elsewhere,"
she hissed back immediately, as if aghast and offended by my disapproval. "Sisters?" I stuttered, my worried tongue stumbling over the question.
"Fret not. They know that this wood is mine and all within it is mine. They would never step into my domain, just as I would not step into theirs,"
she chittered, her voice becoming ever more unsettling with each sentence she spoke. I stepped away, but she hovered closer, approaching with a slow and silent glide. Though she was human-like in shape, imitating a naked feminine form with breasts and an hourglass waist, this was a hollow charade, for her skin was covered in countless layers of yellow exoskeletal plating, sheathed in the carapace of a wasp. She wore black stripes as well as other stranger markings across her person, and her features were sculpted with a venomous cruelty.
"You are the first living man to step into my sacred grove in centuries. Once men came here seeking help, seeking a truce and aid. They made a deal that they would leave me be in the promise of prosperity and conquest,"
she said as she caressed the oak tree with her spidery black and yellow claws.
"A bargain was struck. This is my land. It shall remain so, and I shall remain undisturbed, secret, and safe. No man shall enter, no man shall burn or log, and any man who steps within my borders is meat,"
she hissed as her Vespidae wings, black and transparent, carried her closer. Her eyes, those big black compound eyes, were the worst. They were fragmented like a fly's, but they were empty of any mercy or compassion. Instead, they were filled with an ageless, ancient hunger.
"Does the meat like what it sees? Does it want me to lay my kiss upon it?"
she asked, her strange voice scuttling through the air and infesting my ears. "No," I stammered, backing up slowly and avoiding the enchanting enthrallment of her voice. A paralysing poison, her speech was like the black speech of Queen Mab, or the mischievous spellbinding calls of Puck. It seeped into my every thought.
Am I not beautiful? Am I not the lady of the wood? Come be with me, let me embrace you. Let me lay my kiss upon you.
She whispered, her words pulling and tugging at me. I think I'm just going to leave now, I resisted.
Leave. No, 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 I've not yet had my fill.
She roared. Leaping through the air, those wasp-like wings of hers swept through the wind with razor-sharp speed, torpedoing her entire body towards me, her claws and hungry jaws ready to sink into my soft human skin. It was only by a miracle that I ducked and avoided her grasp at the last minute. However, in my panic, I failed to see what was around me and tripped over the faceless body of my friend, Simon. I screamed and rolled away, scrambling towards the oak tree at the centre of the clearing. Looking around in a panic, I could no longer see my flying assailant.
I can taste your fear. It salts the skin and makes the meat taste so sweet.
Her voice dribbled and taunted from all directions. A globule of drool splashed upon my shoulder and ran down my scout uniform. Breathless and terrified, I forced myself to edge my eyes upward to the sight I already knew awaited me. Above, crawling upside down on the bark of the tree, was the predatory female, her wings folded back and vibrating with excitement.
Come here, meat,
she screeched as her bow lips split wide and revealed her endless rows of grey fangs. In my panic, I swung my torch in front of myself, and although I missed her face, the flames caught the branches of the oak and set it alight. Unnaturally, the fire spread quickly, slithering across the skeletal leafless bark and branches of the tree, causing it to groan and cry out like no tree should.
What have you done, stupid meat?
The woman wailed as she swatted the torch from my hands, causing it to land into a collection of discarded tents and a propane tank. An explosion ripped through a campsite graveyard and swiftly rivers of flame tore through the larder.
You wretch, you horrible little wretch. I will peel the face from your head. I will eat you slow from the feet up.
She screamed as she flew above the walls of yellow and red haze. With a quaking stomp, she fell from the sky and landed in front of me. I was weaponless, unprotected, and without escape. Victoriously, she scrambled towards me, buzzing and rumbling across the burning expanse like a fly drenched in toxic bug spray. I, on the other hand, retreated, tripping and stumbling over decades of bones and discarded clothing as I tried to find the means to escape my predatory pursuer. As if by chance, my eyes caught sight of a red metal canister. Praying to whichever god would hear, I begged that the canister held some gasoline, but before I could check if it was full or not, she leapt through the embers behind me. There was no time left. I had to defend myself. Picking up the gas can, I tossed it right at her and watched as the liquid spilled across her chitinous armour and ignited with a wild fury. In an instant, she caught flame and the blaze entwined her female silhouette in a blistering heat. Screams and roars of anguish sounded out, and the whole forest shook with terror as curses in languages I had never heard bounded out from the female as she scuttled across the scorched grove. I didn't stay to watch her burn and make sure the job was done. I ran, falling into mires and tumbling down hills. On I fled, fearing that behind every trunk and tree there she'd be. Every thought in my head was worry for her and her sisters. So I sprinted, galloping for days, stopping only to slurp some water from the occasional creek or stream. Time passed, but still I continued to ignore my aching hunger, the exhaustion and the pain. Bleeding, bruised and covered in mud, I stumbled on, and finally, when I could walk no further, I fell through a bush and into a campsite. Barely conscious, I watched as our scout leader rushed over, with the rest of the troop following behind. Then it all went black. Next thing I remember was waking up a day later in hospital. I tried to tell my scout leader that I had been lost for days. I spoke of how the others fell prey to the lady in the woods, but he didn't believe me, and what he said next left me beyond bewildered.
John, your story doesn't make sense. You weren't missing or lost for days, not even hours. It was only 30 minutes at most since we lost track of you guys, and then just as we were about to inform the park rangers, you fell into the camp.
My scout leader stated. That's not possible. It was night, and then day, and night again. I ran for days. I'm not crazy, I screeched. But looking back, I suppose that didn't help my case.
It is strange. The doctors were convinced you were of pretty much the same. They said you looked like someone who had spent a week out in the wilderness, malnourished, starving even, but you hadn't,
he replied, almost leaning towards believing me. Then they appeared, a bunch of men dressed like park rangers, which they claimed to be. But once they started speaking, I wasn't so sure.
I'm sorry to tell you this, young man, your friends, well, they fell victim to a bear attack. Most likely a grizzly bear. You're lucky to be alive,
one of the men said in a cold, robotic tone. No, it was her, I yelled.
That part is cordoned off for a reason. It's dangerous, full of bears, and you would do well to stick to the path in the future,
the unflinching and inhuman ranger declared. What about the fire? I set fire to her and her lair. Surely you've seen that, or at least smoke from it, I claimed. But this too did nothing to convince them of my sincerity.
Son, there was no fire, no Lady of the Wood. Just a bunch of boys who got lost and unfortunately crossed paths with a hungry bear,
one of the men said, his words pressing, and not so much a statement, but rather a threat. That was the last thing they said, and I never saw them again. Though I suspected they were always watching or listening, just to check that I never revealed the truth. Not the truth that there is monsters. No, the truth that the Lady of the Woods revealed. She claimed this land of ours was won and given through a deal with her and her kind. A deal which was cemented on the promise of secrecy and protection of herself and her sisters. I imagined that those in charge, those in power, would do anything to ensure that secret never comes to light, and that the bargain remained intact, out of fear that what was given would be taken away. With that in mind, I chose to remain silent for most of my life. Until now, that is. Too many people have died because of my silence, so now I'm speaking out. If you are reading this and have any plans on visiting a national park in the future, then please remember, stick to the path. Do not stray from the trail. Do not dawdle. There is a reason why we were afraid of the dark and the forests. For the woods of the world are ancient and wild, and they conceal a wicked truth. There are ravenous things out there. and I hope you enjoy the blooper reel. So, here is my story. Especially if the places we were exploring. And at first we felt vindicated. For hours until Simon. But why were they left here? I mean, they've clearly dug out a fire pit, spent the time to set the camp up. The others didn't say that too. Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly as he'll. Simon insisted, trying his best to remain natural. No! Tyler's right! Remember the Kenner family? In 1982, they were... I snapped. Looking around, I scanned the bark and... Then wouldn't it be better if we were walking around? But as I brought compass out from my pocket, I could already see. He yelled as he bounded up from the log on which we... Simon and Tyler screamed and followed in my wake and dragged him into the deep of the redwood trees. Instead, they were filled with an age. I tossed it right at her and watched as the liquid spilled across her chitinous. Time passed, but still I continued to ignore my aching hunger. Not the truth that... Hey family, please be so kind as to punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. And by subscribing, you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. A very big thank you to Connor B93 for allowing me to narrate this awesome story. And why not hashtag Cryptids Roost in your comments. If you would like to support us and make a donation, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal and a Buy Me a Coffee account. I have a subreddit and or email if you would like to submit a story that you've written that you would like me to narrate for you. You can also follow us. All my socials and all my other links are contained within the Linktree link below. And don't forget to check out the end screen. See above. That will also list some more videos in my back catalogue. All the links are below. Take care everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is.